That looks.
Yeah, I gather, yes, I can see that residential. It's 6:30, so.
Yeah. Oh, that's
I'm
right.
gonna leave it for
My
like
nephew.
Well, actually, I have to do it on it.
Oh, yeah.
4:55, 4:50.
I'll tell you about that sometime. No, Henry.
So usually I can hang it.
Kimberly, this is public, so you don't have to admit it. Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
she spells it just the same.
Kimberly, are you there?
Elizabeth said.
Kimberly? Can you hear us?
Yeah. Mike is up.
Is that still a problem, Microsoft? No.
He's not a chasm.
So Mike works.
Right down the road.
You hear us, Kimberly?
She's muted.
I'll try
She's
to-
muted. Kimberly, can you hear us?
Hey,
You're muted.
Stupid brother named him Howard, actually the third.
That's better.
All right. Oh, yeah. Hi, Kim.
Hi there.
I'd like to call the meeting to
Yes,
order.
call to order, we've got enough people.
Order.
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Take roll call, we got Lenny.
What do you think about, the minutes from the last meeting? Pat? I'm giving you soft,
Yes, I was,
slow pitch
I
here.
was getting a roll call in.
Okay.
The first order of business is old business, consideration of the July 9th, 2024 minutes. Do we have any comments or?
Looks good to me.
I move that we accept it as written.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Minutes approved.
All right, want me to take it over?
Yeah, why don't we go over the discussion of the topic idea.
Pat, you have to leave at 4:15 and then Lenny has to leave at 4:45.
And I have to leave at 4:30.
So I guess we're gonna have a.
We're gonna have
So
a
the
abbreviated
meeting's
meeting.
gonna end
We
at-
didn't know what we were gonna talk about anyways.
Okay, right. So, I thought we had a good meeting last time going through the septic systems, and I circulated, my update, which consolidated, what I saw, or what everybody saw, what everybody agreed on. I had put in there basically seeing if we could do something, to an existing system, when it's being rebuilt, if it's below ground. And I went back and forth with Dave Broke and he said he really can't. And he had said that at our meeting and I guess that's where we are now. So I'm concerned about a septic system that is built, into the ground, not on top of the ground. He advocates building on top of the ground and
Yes.
I put in here, where is it, thought I put it in here, but, oh,
Now, what happens if
Okay, yeah.
we go through a lot of septic systems and they're all built below ground?
well, that's another issue, but, the bullet point, change specs on new and replacement systems improves phosphorus protection by building on top of soil. So that is what he recommended. And I challenge him on what do you do with one that is short circuiting, or on sensitive soils or bedrock and it's, built into the ground and you want to redo it. And is there any way to redo an existing system? And he basically he kind of went back and forth on other things, but I think he's basically saying, no, you've ruined the structure of the soil that existed since the last ice age. And you need that in order to, mitigate phosphorus. So I've taken that out of here. it still makes me uncomfortable because I think that there's a lot of systems that are built into the ground, below ground, and if they're short circuiting, I'm at a loss what to do. So,
That's a problem.
so anyway, other than that,
What John Blaze said, you just do as best you can, right?
no,
Common sense and. For each
Yeah, but if it's
particular
all gonna
system.
go into the lake, that's, defeats our purpose.
Well, there's other things you do, for each system, you gotta. work with the.
yeah, but they broke this thing, basically, there isn't. Well, so, yeah, I'm all for it, yeah, sure, so let's do the best job we can, and if Roke is saying, well, it's just not gonna work.
Well, but it can work in a sense that you can put the leach field somewhere else.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
mean, you can't put he's saying you can't put the leach field back in exactly the same location. You might be able to place it,
Yeah,
30 yards over to the
I
side,
mean, there is,
It would have to be
there's gotta be a
above, it would be on
retrofit.
top of the soil.
on top of the soil, but not in exactly the same
There's
location.
got to be a
right.
retrofit that's not that expensive.
Well, sometimes they fail just because they get inundated with roots.
Hmm.
So I had one, put it right back in the same place, but they removed a lot of trees around it. Excavated out the old junk, put in new systems, and the roots. The source of the roots is gone, so it should work. So they don't always fail because of the soil condition.
No, I think what he's saying that if it is failing because of sensitive soils, or, fractured bedrock and it's short circuiting. You can't do anything about it, basically, is what I'm getting from him. Which is discouraging.
We need public surge.
Pardon me,
We need public surge.
public sewage,
municipal sewage plant, you're not gonna get.
yeah, that's not.
No, I know,
doesn't
I
happen.
know.
But,
Well, I recall that some laws, old days, Title V, and you build a new house. You have to have a second leach field as a possibility, yeah,
Second leach field,
an area that you can build a second leach field to replace the
you have
first
to have
one.
more than one site.
Yeah, I don't know if that has ever been done in locally.
Hmm.
And then there's some federal Title V stuff. that
I think
involved with-
the most important thing is we must educate the people that do this for a living. Put in septic systems. So going forward, we have to have rules for. They can't put it in they can't dig out 5 feet and put it in a sandy, granity area.
Well, they're very careful, I mean, I've had. Like Andy Morrow. He is now designing septic systems and when you get the applications and they're all, has to be certified by septic soil. Certified.
You mean the people that do
Certified
the
engineer.
design?
This is it's not just people, there's a group of licensed septic soil.
Design, they do the
Designers.
design.
Out of school and they follow certain rules and regulations and they measure very carefully from the well, from different bodies of water and it's a lot of work goes into designing these.
Yeah, I know that, but if they're designing them and then they put them into sandy soil with down 5 feet, then
Well, they also have to check the soils.
Yeah, they design them on each site, they go out and do core samples and see.
right, I just had one put in recently, so I'm a little familiar with that, but. What happened with all the places that were in, that they went down and they were only cared about E. coli and they didn't care about what was. Getting into the granite and getting into the sand and going into the lake.
Well, in any case, trying to move forward, so the septic section, I feel is okay, and we can move on from here. Or at least I would suggest that. Any other comments on that first section? Anything that missing or you want to change?
Well, when you say we can move, Mike, I have a question, and that is, you say we can move on from it. The way we left it last time was that we were gonna see if we could get either Dave Rogue or John Blaze to kind of go over with us what we were proposing and see whether pass muster with them. Now, did you actually do that with?
No, I haven't done that yet.
So, I mean, I'm not sure that, I'm not saying we should dwell on it now, but I'm not sure that we're ready to kind of leave it in its entirety. We need.
Yeah, I agree with you. But certainly with, well, I would imagine with both of those, people that, they would have comments on the other sections that we want to address.
Sure, of course, yeah.
So we could go through the rest of the 2 pages and
Sure.
then seek feedback.
Very good.
Okay, so I would suggest we go on to the vegetative buffer and tree cutting.
Okay.
And Paul, before our meeting, you said that we should talk about trees, and I think this is where we want to talk about.
Well,
trees.
but I guess to turn the hands on this. I'm thinking that. If we have to have you go up to every site, it's just, it's totally beyond your ability and time. And whether or not we could provide for third parties who are qualified, like arborists, to make decisions based on what we come up with. And I was thinking we should have a session where we have arborists come in and talk about how this is in the field. You know, in the issue of cutting down mature trees. And I had an arborist out 2 days ago and he says, this tree is 10 out of 10 has to come down right now. I'm gonna be here tomorrow. Take it down. It's really dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, the
So
arborist,
should I need to, so should the arborist call you or I need to call you?
What I like to have happen is like the landowner emails me for a request, maybe even include a photo for the email. And I usually run out and see them that day or the day after. And I'll email back, you know, the opinion. So there's a paper trail. You have proof of. And it eliminates the whole, other towns do an application and it takes a week or two. To go through the process.
idea.
Whereas, you know, with the storm we had last winter, I found it expedites the whole thing. If there's a tree hanging over a house, it's swaying, it's gotta come down now. Shoot me the email, shoot me the picture, and plus if the arborist calls at the same time and says, hey, this guy's gonna send me an email. I know the details of the job and I can prove it. You know, very cool.
So that process, we need to draft an ordinance about how this is done.
well, that's in the ordinance already, right? I mean, that's.
Well, the process is not,
Yeah.
but the contacting the code enforcement officer is in the ordinance.
Well, what's,
How do you handle old pine trees? You know, that
I don't know, I bet the arborist do it. But I mean, if you got one I gotta look at, I mean, I can go look at it and I'll be. This afternoon or tomorrow morning. Who's the arborist
Ryan Moore,
out of Augusta?
what's that?
He's out of Augusta. Prestige or something like that.
Pro Tree Service.
He's a good guy. He knows what he's doing.
okay, let's work through the vegetative buffer points here. The first one is require a vegetative buffer of, 30, 100 feet.
Another meeting. Later.
So requiring a buffer on all properties, either immediate or sunset by 20, X. So we decided we can't do that. That essentially require a vegetative buffer.
Retroactive? No.
Yeah.
No.
But we decided that what we understood was the only way to do that is it's, if there's a trigger of some sort when somebody applies for
Right.
some other purpose.
But we don't have the administrative capability that Auburn has to do that, you know, we don't have a team that's gonna sit there and say, okay, well, you wanna build a shed, so therefore you have to put in a 30-foot buffer.
You can't just say it.
Well,
90% of the people
yes,
go along
somebody
with it.
could do that, but are we gonna have Hans do that? We're gonna have, who's gonna do that? We don't have,
Well, Maybe we
Auburn
don't have
has,
to enforce it, maybe we could just recommend it.
I think we should.
The rules, the new rules are,
If we-
we would like you to have a vegetative buffer.
Well, we can recommend anything we want to recommend, but
We don't have to have the police go out because they don't have.
so, okay, so that's interesting, so now I understand what you're saying, so it's right into the ordinance that,
We would like,
if,
Recommended.
that we would like a buffer on all properties.
on the lake,
In order to preserve the quality of the lake,
Right,
it should be
I mean-
something like that, not what we would like, because nobody's gonna go with that, to explain
yeah,
the reasoning. And if we
Right.
can't mandate it, we can't, but if we don't have something that says what should be done, nobody's going to do
in
it.
5 years, we might be able to say, well, now we're not mandating, we're gonna. You know, it's gonna be against the law if you don't have a.
We can't do that, that's.
I think you could just say, man, we would like you to have a vegetative buffer, because, like Janice says. There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm just trying to think of the effectiveness of.
I think it'll be effective, if it's in the,
Sort of a mission versus an ordinance.
right,
What is-
a mission versus an ordinance.
Yeah,
Policy versus an
Yeah,
ordinance.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we're after.
But we have,
Mission.
we have an ordinance.
We're
Yeah.
here to write an ordinance, so it's, I just. So then it says, the ordinance says we, in the interest of, preserving lake quality,
We
a
recommend,
A vegetative buffer should be protecting the lake on all properties, something like that.
yeah,
and then you could
it's
also
up to
say,
the-
and there's lots of people that can help with that.
I know, but I'm just trying to workshop this. So then it's in there and then somebody comes in and says, screw it, I'm not gonna do it. And then does Hans go to them and say, well, we have a,
we don't
No, 'cause
have
it's
any
not a law.
enforcement. We
It's not a
just
law.
are recommending that people do it. And what I'm finding now as I go around is people are getting wind of this. So if it's in print somewhere,
Yeah,
they will do it or not do it on their own. But what I'm finding is people are more and more interested to know what's in the best interest of the lake.
We put, you know,
we have to mention it in the shoreline zoning. We have to.
I think that mentioning, go ahead, Tanya, sorry.
No, go ahead. I mean, it would be remiss if we didn't tell them what we'd like, our ideal ideas are for the lake. We'd be remiss. We have to recommend. You don't have, they don't all have to be laws. They can just be recommendations.
in the shoreline zoning, in the ordinance.
Exactly.
Kimberly, do you have something?
Strongly.
Yeah, I guess my concern is I don't know if a recommendation is really strengthening the ordinance. I mean, we already have a lot of information from 7LA and BLA about buffers. That information's out there. But I don't know if making a suggestion or a recommendation is going to strengthen the ordinance. I think it's really important. I think we should have buffers, but I'm not sure if that's going to accomplish strengthening of the ordinance.
It has to be mentioned, and this is the town of Belgrade's new rule for the shoreline zone.
But the word, your operative word there was rules, and you're not proposing a rule.
No,
So
it's
that's,
true. Yeah, well, we could say that, we could
Well,
say,
okay, we can do that, but my guess is, I'm pretty sure that, I'm pretty sure that the select board, if not the planning board, is just gonna shoot that right down. They're gonna say, we want these are the rule, you know, what we're talking about here are the rules. This is not a rule that it has no place in it.
Why can't we, sort of broaden the trigger? Make it, most, you know, any act disturbance of soil or any building, make a
Yeah.
broader definition of
Yeah,
it.
I'm sure, I'm thinking, okay, we
Just-
state, here's what we want, why we want it.
Right.
And then, in the event of a property without a shoreline, without a vegetative buffer, seeking a building permit. Then we have some language, basically best efforts are made.
What could it be, seeking a building permit?
Which
Do
do
we
you
have
say
any more
first?
discretion?
Could be on property transfer.
Property transfer, conversion,
Then you're saying, then you're back into mandating it, you know. I mean, what are you're gonna deny them being able to transfer it? I mean, you could deny a building permit, because they don't have a vegetative buffer.
I need a manager to
No,
pick up my time.
Why not?
But I mean, I know.
that would be arbitrary.
What's that?
That would be arbitrary.
Well, I mean, I know, we're seeking, Auburn is doing it. They're saying, we look for a trigger and then we negotiate. You know, you wanna build a shed, we want you to have a buffer. So how do we do that? And Auburn can do it because they've got a department with a bunch of people that are, you know, full-time doing that.
I mean, you could put a note in the ordinance where it says, you know, clearing, the section for clearing, outside of timber harvesting. It is recommended to have, you know, first sentence, it's recommended to have a 10-foot buffer or 20-foot buffer. Then get into the ordinance part of it. I mean, you put an opening sentence into it with the recommendation first. Or even they have notes, but I don't know in this section where they go through this part of the ordinance, having notes inserted won't really flow well. But, you know, an opening sentence to that section of the ordinance. You could have. Not gonna hurt anything.
No, it's not gonna hurt anything, but is it going to fly with the select board, planning board? And is it gonna be effective? I guess that's the question. How do you implement it? And,
Well, it's a recommendation and then, you know, get some.
I think people, you know, it has to be there. I would think 90% of the people would really want to comply with that.
Not really, there's a lot of people that say I'm allowed to have 20% of my lot cleared, I want my full 20.
Right, and that's the idea that we're trying to change. So
Yeah.
I feel like we really need to say something about buffers in this ordinance.
Yeah.
Ordinance.
I mean, that's so ignorant.
Because it's absolutely the last bastion of safety for the lake. You know, and that's what we're here to do. So I kind of like the idea, I don't know how these things are written, but some preface that's saying, you know, along the idea of vegetative buffers.
Well, if I could say this, people are not gonna read this, and when I say that, when I think of I have some neighbors down the lake. They have a lawn right smack down to the lake, and they're not gonna read this ordinance. The only reason they would is if someone tried to enforce it on them, then they'd read it carefully to see if there's some way they could get out of it, a loophole or something.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they aren't gonna read and look at some preface that tells them what it would be nice if they did it. They're gonna completely ignore it unless somebody tries to enforce it on them.
Exactly,
Well, I think
because
that
how many
they
people
might,
up here have read the ordinance?
raising
So
hands.
I'm gonna give you some input. If
Good,
you put in the ordinance, it won't, the planning board and the select people, it
we'll
won't
push
fly.
it out.
What you do instead is do what we're doing already. The local lake association like BLA and Seminole keep educating people and take, you know, and keep putting the message out there.
Well,
I don't-
Like,
Right, Lake Smart, exactly, but maybe push a little further, I think if you put in the ordinance, you'll see there'll be a lot of people. Just go down to the Alpine complex, that's a big lawn right down the lake. I don't think they're gonna wanna put in buffer, and they've been educating plenty, so.
I think that we could talk.
There's reality and then there's wish lists, and I'm just saying, you gotta,
Actually, I hear they have a buffer for outlets.
it's not that far. I've been down there.
That's what my wife.
I'd be willing to talk. to them.
It's not much, it's about as wide as this table.
Okay.
It's not as wide as it
Sandy
should
Beach
be.
Park,
Huh?
is that the Sandy Beach Park?
And why don't they want to do that?
People like their lawns, but you keep. I guess, I
Why
don't,
don't they
The
want-
question is how to get a message out to people to change their minds.
Maybe.
Is
door to
there some
door?
other vehicle than this?
But I don't think that's our mission. Our mission is to write a shoreline zoning ordinance.
I know, but the ordinance is supposed to protect the lake, and this is one of the most important things.
No, I don't disagree with that. If I was able to, I would mandate a 100-foot buffer, no exception.
But we can't.
Through you is what I would say. That would be in parentheses, but,
Well, but Chris, a couple minutes ago, you said, but on transfer, you were saying we can't do it on transfer? I thought we could do it on transfer.
I don't know,
I mean, that seems like one important trigger. Why can't we mandate it on transfer of property? I mean, I realize that's a
Not
slow.
retroactive.
because, but it would be retroactive. It's, if here's a property and the value might be that it has a lawn running down to the lake.
Well,
Right.
And,
but everybody would know that you don't have, that when it's transferred, that you have, everybody knows that when a property is transferred, you have to put in a buffer. So
They do.
Right, yeah, so if we
if
did
it's
that-
in the ordinance, if it's
That
in the
allows us
ordinance.
to do it, if you have that trigger,
so
there.
So
Okay,
here's,
so
and
then
I'm,
we have it.
I love this to be true, but, and I just, we've had experts who have said you can't do that. So I'm kind of.
What can't you do?
Well, take it to-
It was unconstitutional,
No, retroactive,
Take it to
you
the
say,
Supreme Court, retroactive.
so,
you say on a transfer,
right,
you gotta follow these certain vegetative buffer guidelines.
Last name.
What's wrong with that?
let me answer
That's
Lenny,
what's wrong.
Lenny, in that situation.
Realtors aren't gonna tell it, that's what's wrong.
Then which is, if we pass a law, the ordinance gets passed,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden somebody's lawn that might be worth $200,000 out of their $2 million property, let's say.
Yeah.
You just lost $200,000
so
on that person, so it's the same as if you're doing it retroactively.
yeah, I understand. I see your point. I understand. We're taking value out of their property.
Yeah,
No, we're not. We're adding
No,
value
no,
to
no.
the property because the lake isn't green.
You can get a legal opinion on, it, but I think if you said that, let's say a simple thing, in a sale of property, you have to have a vegetative buffer of 50 feet. And so now people know it's there, and if they're gonna sell the property in the next 10 years, they think ahead, well, we better put a buffer in during the next 20 years or 15 years if we're gonna sell the property. And I have a question to you, Hans, because this whole thing started, as I understand, on the woodland issue, which was, and that dealt with erosion, we are here today because there were gaps and voids in the shoreline zoning ordinance. Is that correct? On the
Not in
woodland
my
issue?
opinion. I think it's a personal,
What happened? that we
they
could do
had
now?
to create a new outfall pipe for their foundation drain. They dug up the yard, they put in the pipe. They, had, they moved some rocks and things to make the outfall go to the lake, and the neighbors didn't like it. So I mean, they regraded, reseeded. It's like anytime a foundation goes under a house within 50 feet of the house, the shoreline, 30 feet. I mean, Pine Beach Road right now, there's 2 of them that gone in.
And if we-
And after they're done, let me finish. They've torn it up. Well, the contractor's gonna smooth it out. And they smooth it out to a grade so the water drains away from the structures. And that process looks like they just landscaped the whole yard, put in a grass lawn. But it's done for erosion control purposes. That's done to mitigate mold and mildew and flooding in the house. There's a lot of reasons it's done. You can't just blanket say it's not allowed to you, because I don't like you.
But in that example, could you say that can be done, if there's any disturbance of a certain percentage of a lot,
10 cubic yards is the threshold.
and then
What's
What
that, a
happens?
dump truck?
if 10 cubic yards is a
Small
lot,
truck.
then what happens?
They need to have a permit. But in the situation
You
here,
have to have a DEP permit?
from the town, they get a permit by rule first, because they're working within 75 feet of the resource. And if there's excess of 10 cubic yards of disturbed soils, they have to come to get a permit from the town
To do what?
to disturb 10 cubic yards of the soil.
But if we said it's 10 cubic yards as disturbed, then you have a vegetative buffer requirement.
Why can't we say something like any town approval requires?
Yeah, but I just wanna know,
Well,
what's wrong with that idea?
and have you read the ordinance, section S? No, you haven't. Well, that's where it's
Does it say
addressed.
that already?
You should read it and see what it says.
Okay, tell me where, okay, I'm gonna get it.
Well,
to-
tell us, what, I mean, seeing we're in the
It's,
middle of
it's,
this
it's a lot, it's like
discussion.
a page long. I don't have it.
It's
I
a
mean,
lot of
size it
detail.
up.
I mean, I've read through the
Yeah.
ordinance, but it was months ago, and,
But what's
in
wrong
any
with the
case,
trigger like 10?
you're not supposed to disturb the duff. There's a lot of stuff going on, with that property and differences of opinion, so I don't think we should focus on that property.
But it was the
It sparked something.
spark why we're here, so I'm just.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, why can't you use like some objective criteria,
Trigger.
some 10 cubic feet, 8 cubic feet? That triggers a vegetative buffer requirement.
Or what, like, don't people, if they wanna do an addition or change something,
You can
don't they
add that
have to
too.
come here? So anything that requires town approval for a change, permit, thank you. Requires that you have at least a 10-foot buffer on your property at the base of the shoreline. I mean, because that's enforceable, at least, and if we can't, we can't, but it's somewhere in there saying what we want, and we should say why, probably.
I would think, rather than saying a given 10 feet, you might say 10% of the distance from the house to the water resource.
Or percentage,
Because some
Oh, yeah,
places,
that's
they only
good.
have
right,
12 feet.
Right,
it's true,
yeah, okay. That's a
10%
good
of the
idea.
distance from
The house, I mean, the building,
the building to the waterfront?
yeah.
To, yeah, the edge of the.
yeah, if you do a percentage, then you're building a
Can we
buffer that's
do,
relative to
can we
the
do
space.
20%?
Well, I've been doing a lot of houses close to the lake and they've been able, in every case so far, they've just been able to do 10 feet. But yeah,
But
I
how-
well, you would know better than.
But
I
how
would.
close are
20.
they? Are they?
Is that 20% or 10%?
Well, it
If
was
they're
also,
30 feet,
it
that's.
also
that's
depends
30.
on whether you're willing to do, they were happy to use their front yard to create a path and create a whole buffer in their front. They didn't care if they had a playground in front, so so what percentage would, maybe you could help us decide, is 10 or 20?
I mean, again, it's
15,
property sensitive. You go down Pickerel
Right.
Cove Road and all of those houses have just maybe 10 feet. I mean, the lots are sometimes just 50 feet deep.
So it would be a 2-foot buffer.
10%.
That wouldn't be egregious, would it?
Some of these yards are on slopes and that's all they have. They can't even play croquet there. So they'd have, go outside, turn around, walk back inside.
Well, if they want to
Right.
play croquet, they need a bigger
No, I
property.
mean, my family has a place that's 10 feet from the lake or so, and there's no lawn there. It's all as much of a, I mean, there's blueberry bushes and stuff like that, so we've never found it, it's been there since 1932, never found it offensive that we don't have a lawn there.
Didn't bother you, I mean,
What's that?
it didn't impede your.
No, it's, I mean, there's some stepping stones to walk around that corner of the porch, you know,
Yeah.
so it's, so 20, so in a 10-foot, if they have 10 feet, then 20% would be 2 feet. Seems reasonable to me.
Yeah.
You know, if it's 100 feet, they get 20 feet.
for me, that's a start, I would
So
accept
20%.
any,
Yeah, I
And
agree, I agree.
I'll go for
I think the
20%.
percentage is a good idea.
I'm not gonna take credit for that. That was,
Or you.
No, no, you
that
should,
was, Geiger girl, Lynn Geiger's.
Yeah.
Uh,
You sharp.
Right, she did say something.
anybody
about percentage.
remote wanna say anything?
What's that?
Anybody on the remote Zoom wanna say anything?
Yeah,
Is
I
that-
would like to say something. I think that we should increase the percentage because this is going to be the start of a dialogue with the select board and planning board. And I think if we go with, oh, we think everyone will agree with 10%, I think that's putting ourselves at a disadvantage from a negotiation point. I would say we should start with 25 or 30% attached to any permit.
Yeah, okay, I think that's good.
So
then we can always go
start with
down.
30%,
Yeah, let's do 30.
and then we'll see where we can.
Alright,
I
now,
knew you had something to say.
so what are the parameters of the percent though?
Distance to the lake from the house or the total property?
Yeah,
What are the
Is it-
parameters?
Is it a strip along the whole lakefront? Or if they have an open area for their path to a dock?
You're allowed one open area, at least one open area for a path to the dock, and it should be less than 6 feet.
And what if they have an area where they launch kayaks and canoes, is that?
That, we're always trying to arrange for something like that too. Good point. Just all these things, we need to consider them,
Yeah.
absolutely.
and then I don't know
But-
how you measure from the lake, is it the high water mark? You know, how they, surveyors play funny business when they do surveying, the high water mark gets pushed up the acreage, I mean, up the,
I think this is a good start. We can kind of field test it before we go.
Yeah.
yeah,
Look at some property, how is this really gonna work, and have Hans there to see what he would think is. Issues on enforcement based on
yeah,
what we've talked to, but
We'll go to 37 Pickle Cove Road. and Look at it, tell me what you think about it. What buffer would he have?
Who,
37.
well, you know, you can give exceptions too. We've gotta start somewhere.
Hickory
Well,
Cove.
now it becomes.
Right, then it becomes
Pickerel.
not
It's arbitrary.
Right.
Now, what's his reason he can't do it? Is it just steep slopes or?
He's got less area than what we got in this little pit right here.
well, it depends on what he wants to do with it. So like, I now have a Lake Smart evaluation for houses that are too close to the lake. And I can assess whether there's enough buffer depending on what's going on slope of the hill, whether.
The guy who lives in New Hampshire, just go out there and look at it sometime. You won't disturb them. 37 Pickle Cove.
Where is that, Hans?
Where is that?
It's in Pinkham's Cove, right up.
Oh, Pinkham's Cove.
It's less than-
Oh, Pecos Cove.
Yeah, it's off Foster Point.
Some of these places, the town should just buy out and have a park. I mean, they're, they sound
Donations.
like they're borderline.
I'd just like to say, there's also a term that the town uses, which is non-conforming, which a lot of these lots are. And in our case, most of our property is non-conforming. And
Right.
we worked with the town in order to, get the build that we wanted, get the buffers, et cetera, move the house closer from the water. So a lot of these places exist and there already is a method for working with that. And the term that they use for our property is non-conforming.
Right.
So that was a negotiation with the planning board, Kimberly?
It was was it Andrew, do you remember, was that planning board?
Yeah, it was the planning board and the, code enforcement.
So,
It was planning board and code enforcement officer that we've had discussions with, trying to figure out the best way to build the house and move things closer, get rid of some impervial paving.
Everybody's gonna need.
Yeah, 4:15. See you later. Bye.
Bye, guys.
I hate to say I have to go
We have to
too.
leave too. so-
If you leave, then we don't have a quorum and we can end the meeting.
Right.
Yeah, so, well, I think we got a lot done.
We made some good progress.
One sentence.
You got 7.
No,
So
but
you
this
got
was
three- you
like,
got
we all
4
know
here.
how we feel about it.
Continue the meeting.
We
Tanya
can
has to leave at some point.
continue until Lenny leaves, I guess.
No, Tanya said she had to leave at some point.
Well, I do,
For me,
I do.
yeah.
What time do we need to leave?
I'll have to meet somebody at my house at 4:30.
What time is it?
4:15,
Oh, we better go.
yeah.
Okay, so these folks have to leave.
She's getting. Unless you wanna
See what
go,
you've done, Pat? All right.
I'm sorry,
Like a
No, that's
waterfall.
fine.
I didn't wanna not count.
We
No, I
didn't know
appreciate it.
that all these people were leaving,
Yeah,
sorry.
I know.
But the meeting goes from 3:30 to 5.
I know.
We're usually here, but we can't today.
Yeah. Okay,
We know that.
well, summer rules.
Yeah, my whole family's here.
Yeah, it's difficult. All right,
Okay.
well then I'm gonna say, bye, Kimberly. All right. I guess I'm
Hi,
gonna
guys.
end.
Well, if we only need four, if we have Kimberly's.
No, we can continue.
Yeah,
All right.
we have four with Kimberly's.
We can go until you have to.
Yeah, I just have to leave at about five,
All right, thank you.
about 10 minutes to five.
Oh, great. So we can still count. It's great.
Okay.
Thank
Continue to
you.
do a little bit more. All right, see you, bye. All right, where were we?
Vegetative buffer.
Well, we agree, but how do you trigger a vegetative buffer? How do you?
So I guess we need to get a legal opinion on whether or not a sale or transfer of the property can trigger requirement of a vegetative of having a vegetative buffer. That seems like a crucial issue here.
I think Pat had looked for, he had, emailed through maybe Lorna.
So I did that, but it wasn't about transfer
It
transfer
was just
property.
mandating it.
It was just plain mandating it, and the answer that came back essentially was, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for this thing with transfer. Because there are things that you have to do on transfer, like having your septic system inspected. I think you have, or maybe.
You do.
You do.
You have shoreline zone, a buyer has to get a certificate that in order to, yeah, that's it. So that whole is passed, that's good law.
I think if we
Correct.
reach out to Lorna and ask her to contact, I think it's the MMA or the town's attorney to get resolution as to whether upon transfer, we can request the buffer. I think that might be a good next step.
Yeah, but not the word, not request, it's required.
Require.
Required, yes.
Lenny, or can you?
I can do that,
answer?
yeah.
Okay,
I will,
great.
yeah.
I think that would be, I mean, I'm all out for this stuff. I just feel like, we got beat up on this, so.
Okay.
But we can, hopefully we can get something done here. I'm the triggering by the application. Yeah, that's, maybe we could write that in, that it's, if any building permit, and maybe there's some other permits, requires, a 30% buffer to the greatest practical.
So what other triggers? It could be.
Like-
Building permit, or any,
That's all I can think of. I mean, but there's gotta be other permits, if any permit from the town.
I was thinking, if there's a certain amount of disturbance. Like what Hans was describing, they put in a legal drain, but there was disturbance, and so then they cut down trees and they put beautiful lawn in. But they, instead of just doing the lawn, they could have put in a buffer. And that's why I think we said it is.
I'm not gonna comment, but yes, you're right, yes.
So that's what I think we should gear to, if there's a certain percentage of disturbance of the property, of the existing natural topography, then that triggers a requirement of vegetative buffer, like what Hans just talked about. Down at the Woodlands, they put in a drain and they cut all this thing down and they put a lawn in over it, but they could have just as well not put the lawn in, but required a buffer and put in blueberry bushes and.
Yeah, sure.
And go whatever
Exactly.
else could go, and that would have solved the problem.
Absolutely.
But they wouldn't have had a lawn.
But they would have had a drain.
Yeah, the drain,
running into the lake.
Right.
What is it draining?
The footing of the building.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have a perimeter drain too, but it goes down and it stops,
Yeah.
well before probably a 30-40 foot buffer, you know? So to run it.
Right, you don't wanna drain that right into the lake.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's in this, I've got that in here someplace. But,
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
You really can't.
There are regulations on stormwater that you have to contain all the stormwater within your parcel, and you can't run it off the parcel. And isn't that the law? Or it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a lot of real estate development, that's what I had to do.
Right.
You're doing dry wells and different ways that you are handling runoff.
Right.
You know, it's all a question of how much impermeable area you have, and you are limited to a certain amount of impermeable area.
Yeah,
So
sure.
that's all in the commercial stormwater, commercial
Right.
development
Right.
ordinance as well.
No, we've got that as something, it's actually our next, section that we wanna talk about is stormwater, you know, quality, phosphorus controls on construction and
But
development. So,
sticking with the triggers that we should look.
yeah,
A building permit, I'm talking about soil disturbance.
yeah, which is also just a building, it's part of a building permit. I think. Can't we say any permit from the town?
No, what if someone comes in and decides they're gonna hire a landscape crew to put in the landscape the property?
Yeah.
That should trigger the need for a buffer.
Well, I mean, we had landscape company, we had Lynch come in and put in ferns. In, you know, between closer than 100 feet, you know, and so they planted a whole bunch of ferns, which is essentially a buffer.
Yeah,
But we didn't need a
apply.
But you don't need a permit for that.
No, what I'm just saying is if you disturb a certain percentage of the land, whether it's for landscaping, whether it's to put a driveway in, put a drain in, put in. A horseshoe pit, I don't know. But that triggers the need for a vegetative buffer. There's soil disturbance.
Right, but isn't that a building permit, or are you
You
saying?
don't need a building permit you don't need a building permit to put in a garden. Someone goes in, they're gonna now decide, okay, we're gonna put a vegetable garden in here. And, you know, and they wanna grow vegetables. I think that should trigger it. Anything that's gonna change the natural road, the contours of the property.
Well, but if they don't have to get a permit, then how,
How do you enforce that?
yeah, how do you even know, but you won't know about it, so how could you enforce it?
Well, there's lots of stuff that you don't need to get a
Well-
permit for, that is not allowed. I mean, with all the prohibitions about building in the shoreline zone.
I think that I had in here, about agriculture. And that was, and I actually put it in, any agricultural activity in the shoreline zone with more than 6 animals, one cubic yard of manure involving more than 1,500 square feet shall require a farming conservation plan reviewed and approved by Quebec County Soil and Water Conservation District. I think it was, Dave Roque that said that if you, because I had originally had basically, you can't do any agricultural in the shoreline zone. And he said, then now you've got this amendment to the right to, what is it, grow food or something,
Yes,
or?
right.
Yeah, so it would be unconstitutional because of the amendment that, constitutional amendment that.
But this isn't agriculture, this is the problem is soil disturbance, I'm just suggesting that as a.
Right.
Something as a trigger for the need for a vegetative buffer.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, there's a couple of thoughts. Well, you know, Lenny, you were saying, how do you enforce that? And, I mean, I think your neighbors are probably the best. They are the best thing here, and I actually, that is one thing in here that I really think it makes a lot of sense that permitting, all permits issued within the shoreline zone requires town notification of abutters. I think all neighbors should be notified that somebody's building something or doing something in the shoreline
Agreed.
zone.
I think that's key.
Absolutely key. So, okay, so back to triggers.
I think we can only enforce something that we have to have an application for, so I'm not sure. Maybe we need to think outside the box about how we can get some of these, like soil disturbance, something that the town is aware of or made aware of. That way we have a way to enforce it.
Kimberly,
Because
I don't,
I know that some of the landscaping companies are really honest and really good about conservation, and they have said, I've known people that they have said no to, I won't do that project because it's in the shoreline zone. But I'm also certain that there are other landscape companies that would take that project on.
So, but the project, I don't think that an application for building permit necessarily has to be the triggering event. It could be a non-permit event, like, you know, cutting down trees, you don't need a permit for, you just need approval. You know, it's very,
From the CEO.
yeah, and, well, landscaping, you don't need a permit for.
Don't need permission for.
I don't know if it need a building permit to put a drain in.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to wrap my head around where to go with this.
You know, and as we know, one problem in Maine is that general contractors aren't licensed. So it's a free for all.
Right. All right, so, what do we do?
So I'd like to continue, so
So,
you think about soil disturbance as a triggering event.
Yeah, well, sometimes it speaks in a way
Maybe
that
move on.
I noticed that. When you go out.
I mean, how do you get any change in the Alpine situation, or the situation where you have somebody with lawn down to the smack to the edge of the lake? How do you ever change that?
I think. Within the ordinance, I think we're having a problem. Yeah, I mean, you know, outside the ordinance, there are things that we can do through Seven Lakes Lines and BLA and other things, but within the ordinance. We're kind of, other than having this, trigger event.
What if we said that, you know, the conversion, sale, or transfer, or within the change of title within the family? Any of those things could be triggering events, and you own this property, and you know that if you do anything in the future with it, you're gonna have to change it. So you might be more open to it. As it's without a requirement, because this is something that's gonna be mandated down in the future if you.
So we're gonna, look into the, transfer of the property requiring a buffer.
Right.
Yeah, I've got that. I'll shoot that at Lorna.
Okay. So, and we're gonna keep thinking about other triggers. That seem okay, Paul?
Yeah.
Keep looking for other triggers. The next bullet point is codify lake smart requirements, you know, this is, to tie property tax discounts to, you know, lake smart requirements. I don't think, I mean, I might have put that in there, I'm not sure.
I think weren't we told by either Dave Rope or John Blaze that was something we could not do?
I think that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it seems interesting, but,
It sounds like a great idea to me, but I think we were told that was not gonna be legal.
okay, we can take that out.
Yeah, And I also don't think that the town is gonna be happy to have their taxes, their tax lowered. It's good for the lake. The town's also very happy to receive their taxes, property taxes.
But I think, Kimberly, what would happen is the assessor would just wrap everybody else's up, basically, you know, so the
Gotcha.
balance. You gotta end up at a final number, and if some people get a discount, then, you know, it's probably everybody else is going up to. So it can be done and still be revenue neutral and not be a decline in revenues to the town. I think that would be, but anyway, we'll strike that. Next item is properties that alter their buffer in violation of shoreline zones are required to restore their property in compliance with Lake Smart requirements. So now it's sort of alter their buffer. I think they're basically have to put their buffer back, and it doesn't really have to do with Lake Smart requirements.
Properties that alter their buffer?
Yeah, so if you put in a lawn, yeah, I don't know, this one I would strike as well, I guess.
Well, first of all, that assumes that you have a buffer, and we haven't gotten to the point where we've got required buffer,
Right.
so.
And yeah, so, okay, we'll get that one out of there. So here's the one that, I was inspired by 142 Woodland Camp Road was to, and talk to Dave Roque about that as well. Require all structure foundation drain pipes to terminate as far from lake as possible and include a feature to spread out the flow and encourage infiltration. So I feel that that's an important feature. You guys all agree?
I do.
You read it, I agree, but read it again.
What's that?
It's already written down there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really, I don't know that you can go back and retroactively and require that. I guess it would be just for development going forward.
Spread out the water.
Yeah, did you see it's require all structure, foundation, drain pipes to terminate as far from the lake as
Okay.
possible. And require a feature and include a feature to spread out the flow and encourage infiltration.
All of it down.
Yeah, it's in the bullet point in there.
It's in the review topics document.
Yeah, I can have that right.
And then, the next item is require structures to have gutters that direct water away from lake and to a spreader, and that's what Dave Roque had suggested. I don't know, gutters are such a pain.
Yeah, and sometimes they cause more damage than improvement.
Yeah, it's when you have a drain pipe that clogs up and. Yeah, I mean, I had so many problems with. I don't know, does anybody have a strong feeling about gutters?
I have a strong feeling about the requirement that you put gravel at the drip line. Whether you have a gutter or not, it's usually in the situation where you don't have a gutter. And if you don't have gravel, then you have erosion. And so you want to be able to have the gravel with some kind of a drainage under it, so that it absorbs the inventory there and it doesn't run off.
That's currently part of shoreland zoning and part of getting a new permit to build. I don't know what we could do, if anything, retroactively.
Well, I know it's Lake Smart best practices, but I don't know if it's,
Oh, you could be correct.
I don't think it's part of the ordinance.
So gravel under drip
Under
edges,
drip line.
drip lines.
Sorry, well, I'm not sure, it's not gravel, maybe the wrong word, crushed rock is, I think, what you want, right?
Right.
Right, yeah,
Right.
you have to be careful with your word.
Or stone.
Stone, yeah, crushed stone or whatever, yeah.
But there's a spec for it too.
Yeah,
You have to come up with, you know, it's how deep.
Right, I don't know what. the
Someone
spec
has
is.
to come up with a spec of how deep the trench is, so that it absorbs the water.
Okay, so Firestone lines and gutters. I don't know, Dave Brooks really was high on this requires structures that gutters that direct water away from the lake into a spreader.
We can do that, yeah,
So we'll include that.
prove that.
So this is kind of what you were getting to Paul about tree cutting and the rating system on pages 45 through 47, which is very complicated. And everybody was saying, we don't like how complicated this is.
Exactly.
So we probably should discuss this at the next meeting, I guess, with maybe with Hans, but
And I think we should try and get an arborist or two to
Yeah,
at that
right,
meeting.
that's, you know, we get an
Just
arborist
get-
to talk us through that, see if we can come up with something similar.
Right. Because what, all season, there's a couple arborists
who
around.
would be good? I mean, Paul Levante, but he's semi-retired, he's from Rome. I mean, he's the
He's fine, he's a good guy, but, you know.
good guy. I
But
don't.
I had this guy Brian Moore, who Hans likes, is a good guy. He could-
I get, what's the objective of having them, what do we want them to tell us?
To come up with a system that's practical. To, I mean. What happens in the field is different than what Hans talks about. I mean, Hans told Brian Moore, my guy, do whatever you want, you know, and that's not good either. So I think we just gotta understand how it works now, currently works in the field.
Well, I mean, Paul Levante would, basically, we have a tree that's diseased and it's got sawdust on the bottom of it, and there's all sorts of insects working on it, or the one where the woodpecker peeled every bit of bark off the tree, you know, and he came in and he cut those, and he just knows,
He didn't do anything with the town,
no.
right? My guy,
But I think he had basically permission from the town to do that. Because he knows the CEO, and this was, you know, a couple of years ago, might have been before.
I mean, that's exactly the situation I have. I have a tree with ants crawling around it, sawdust all over the place.
Yeah.
And my guy said that's really dangerous. I'm gonna drop everything and come in and do it tomorrow. I haven't,
And so what Hans is saying is, contact the CEO, and this bullet point is no cutting within vegetative buffer without permission of CEO. Submit a plan to the CEO, all trees to be cut must be marked, post-cutting evaluation by CEO. And then parentheses, will this, serve to simplify the rating system on pages 45 through 47? And, I mean, there's like, you know, the 250 square feet in the canopy and the single footpath and selective cutting,
I don't think the
well distributed.
existing ordinance provides for discretion that's needed in terms of these, particularly in these, what's happened over the years is these big pine trees have gotten very mature, they're 150 years old,
Right,
and they're going, wiping out houses. It's literally next door to me, the house has been destroyed. It hasn't,
Really?
yeah, and they're not there this summer, they got to rebuild the whole thing. And so but I think that maybe if an arborist comes in, certified arborist, and says it should come down, I don't think we have to bring the CEO in it.
Oh, I think you need to get the CEO's approval. That was my understanding.
But I'm just saying, I understand that, but I think that's the way it is now.
Yeah.
Query whether it needs to continue,
I see.
because these arborists have certain, I don't understand, but they have certain requirements on a state level what they can do and not do. But that's why I think it would be helpful to have some arborists in there.
Sure.
Okay, so do you wanna contact the arborist for the next meeting?
I'll contact Brian Moore, maybe if you know our Tom Monty or all season, sure. Meeting,
Next meeting is the 13th of,
no, it can't be, today's what, 23rd.
This is, today's the,
so the. Well, it's the second Tuesday. of
yeah,
the
second
month, right?
Tuesday, the second Tuesday of August.
So that's the 13th of August.
Okay, great.
So that. Yeah, that'd be great if you could line up, so we did line up a. Arborist for the next meeting. Because if you go back and you look at these pages in the ordinance. And I mean, it goes on above, the point system. The well-distributed stand of trees. It has a definition for it, but maintain a minimum rating score of 16. Per 25 foot by 50 foot rectangular area, so I mean, this is.
It's pretty complicated.
It's
but
very
It's
complicated.
very complicated. Nobody can really, even in good faith, it's very next to impossible to stay within that and really know what you're doing. It's not.
So that's why currently it's being enforced by the CEO I don't know what he does if somebody cuts a tree and.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know about it, I don't know what,
Well, I'm sure that happens all the time.
yeah.
It's hard to imagine it doesn't.
I don't know, So I guess that is why. The suggestion is in here to require the CEO to, approve everything, but we'll talk about talk to the arborists and talk about the CEO about that. So the next item is, removal of organic duff, leaf breaking and smoothing of the natural pit and mound topography prohibited within a 100-foot buffer. On properties where the duff has been removed and the pits and mounds have been smoothed, a layer of erosion control mix must be put down over the affected area. So this is kind of like if you rip it all up and put in a lawn, you gotta cover that lawn with erosion control mix. I mean, that's. I don't know, I feel like,
What's the trigger there? Is that the same thing we're running into?
yeah, that's,
It's not so much if you put it in the lawn as if you rip it up and you've got bare dirt, then you've got, or something like that, then you have to put it down the erosion control mix. It's not so much that if you I mean, you don't really put erosion control mix or any kind of bark mulch, which is what that is. It's a bark mulch with a lot of other stuff thrown in. You don't put that into grass so much.
But you have to do that if you build a new structure, you have to disturb all the area around it, and you have the trucks in there, and you've got to put down all this mixing. And they have I think Native Notions has got a particular mix that he puts down.
I guess
Look into this. How to codify it.
if somebody is ripping up their yard to put in a footing drain, for example. Wouldn't you put down, I think you require them to put down, erosion control. Well,
Yeah, I agree with that.
not a lawn.
Well, where are the requirements?
So,
Hey.
how's it going?
Good. You guys are still in Zoom?
Yeah,
We're still doing.
Okay. So the meeting's gonna wrap up and I have to leave, so I'm leaving a new person here with somebody else. So
Okay,
by before 5 o'clock,
yeah, we're about wrapped up now.
are you?
Leaving now or?
I need to leave about 5-7 minutes, something like that.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because I don't want her to lock you in here. She didn't even know you were in here and she just started Monday, so. But I have to leave right now,
Yeah.
so, okay.
All right, yeah,
Thanks for the heads up, Mary.
Be out of here shortly.
well, the new construction, I'm not sure where it is, if you haven't, you know, put hay bales up and affect the whole wetlands with. And then how you restore after new construction, I'm sure that must be in, I don't know where it is, but I know that's done.
Yeah, I think that's in the current ordinance.
Yeah, I think it is.
But we can take a look at that and see if there's a way to improve it, but yeah.
Right, to improve it.
Are we missing something? Should we?
Is there something on tree stumps? And I've heard mixed things as to whether they can be ground, whether they need to be left. Do we need to think about that and possibly add tree stumps to this section or a different section that would make more sense?
Yeah, well, what Hans has said is about tree stumps, he has said is they can be ground down to, they can be, well, used the term twice here, ground down to ground level. But that's it. They can't be pulled, should not be pulled out,
Correct.
and they shouldn't be ground down below ground level.
Right.
We should
So-
probably verify if that's in the ordinance or if that is just something that Hans is suggesting, just to make sure it's covered.
Yeah.
I don't have a copy here with me.
Right.
Stumps from the storm damaged trees may not be removed. I don't remember seeing anything about grinding the stumps in the.
I remember Hans talked about that, Kimberly said.
Yeah, I definitely remember Hans talking about it, but, the dead tree removal, it just says the stumps from the storm damaged trees may not be removed. So do we want to say that they can be ground down?
I think we should probably address it.
Yeah,
Well, you can say, what you could say is they cannot, if you want to say that, is they cannot be ground down below ground level.
Okay,
And they cannot be,
okay, so,
and what Hans was saying also, and this may not, it may not need to be in here because it may just be a standard requirement, is that the work needed to be done by someone who was certified by, there's a certification requirement that is passed by someone from DEP, Maine DEP, to be allowed to do that kind of work. And I was talking with, because I have that's in that very situation, I have a stump, it has nothing to do with the storm, this is a stump that's been there for years. And in fact, it's not, it's more a mound than a stump, but it's the leftover from a tree that was taken down. And he was telling me that, you know, he told me who I should have do it, because the guy, Nathan, who runs Native Notions, who is certified by Maine DEP. And
to grind the stump or?
yeah, to grind it, he said.
Mike's stump grinding is so inexpensive though. So-
Well, but he told me I can't do that. He said, if it's in shoreline zone, it has to be someone who is certified by
Really?
by Maine DEP, right? That is what he said. Do not go, I didn't mention, I mean, I've seen the signs for Mike's. I have no experience with Mike's, whatever, but he told me that I had to use someone who was DEP certified if it was within the shoreline zone. So maybe that needs to be in the ordinance.
Okay.
That's what Hans said.
Okay,
You can check that with him.
so. Let's see if we can finish up this section quickly. The second to last, bullet point is ban on phosphorus fertilizer within shoreline zone, liquid form, nitrogen and potassium only. Everybody okay with that?
Absolutely.
Why liquid form? I ask out of ignorance, I don't know.
Yeah, it would be if it was crystal, or some sort of granular form, it could wash into the lake.
Oh,
So-
so I see, okay, fine.
And,
phosphorus fertilizer?
No phosphorus fertilizer, so that's a total ban within the shoreline zone, and you can use liquid form, nitrogen and potassium, so typically when you get, fertilizer, it would be like 10-10-10.
Yeah,
That's
10
10%.
PK, yeah.
It's 10 of it's nitrogen, phosphorus and
And
potassium, so those are
Right,
the three elements that are in to common fertilizer. So it would be liquid form, nitrogen and potassium only.
I thought Tom was talking about total ban of any kind of fertilizer.
No, actually, I think Dave Rowe
Okay.
might have been Dave, somebody was saying basically, you gotta have some fertilizer for your lawn.
Well, why can you have liquid form and not?
that's what I just asked, I said,
It goes right into the ground, and
Okay.
it doesn't wash off.
Liquid form, nitrogen, potassium, what was the other one? Or,
Well, no, it's the
The third
total, the third is potassium, excuse me, phosphorus, but we banning phosphorus for obvious reasons.
so you can't have liquid phosphorus either.
No, you don't want to have any phosphorus at all, no phosphorus, so it's a ban on phosphorus fertilizer within the shoreline zone. So because we're trying to fight phosphorus from getting into the lake, because
Perfect.
phosphorus is the key
Perfect,
element
yeah.
causing algae blooms. We would ban phosphorus fertilizer,
Okay,
which I
that's,
think is a good thing, and
okay,
then furthermore, we would use liquid form.
Yeah.
So then the last one is record buffer in the property deed. That is something that
I don't understand that.
we ran into that. So. Was it,
John Blaze talked
John
about it, I
Blaze?
don't understand it, because in order to record it in the property deed, you gotta get a survey, and you gotta delineate the buffer in the survey it's gotta be certified by a surveyor, because the registry of deeds is not gonna take any plan that's not certified by a surveyor. I don't know what it does.
well, it keeps somebody, so if you negotiate, if you say, okay, if you're gonna, you got a trigger event and we're gonna require that you put in a 30-foot buffer, it keeps that static with that property, so it can't be undone in the dark of night. That would be the advantage.
It's a good idea, is it practicable, does it work?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Uh,
Since you and I are sitting here, we don't understand how you do that really, I mean, it's.
I mean, I can see it messing up title. For title examiner or title insurance company sees as a requirement that buffer be designed, be recorded, and has it been recorded, how was it recorded, I don't know.
Should we strike it?
I think we should look into it before we strike it.
Okay. All right, well, I'll leave it in there now, so let's and in the meetings, since we don't really, we're down to, at least Kimberly's still there, that's good. All right, Lenny, we're voting to terminate the meeting.
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
I agree.
Aye.
Sure.
Aye.
Okay,
All right.
All right. Have a good evening, gentlemen.
Yeah,
Thanks, Kimberly.
thank you, bye.
Have a good day.
you too.
All right, thank you.
All right.
I'm off to another meeting, doesn't that sound exciting?